The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs, a hum of disbelief rippling through the packed room like an uneasy tide. All eyes were on Judge Lawrence Bennett, his face a mix of irritation and faint amusement as he gazed down from his bench. He adjusted his glasses and fixed his gaze on the young girl standing confidently at the podium. "Let me get this straight," Judge Bennett said, his voice laced with skepticism. "You, a high school junior, are here to argue constitutional law in my courtroom?" He leaned back in his chair, shaking his head as laughter rippled through the audience. But Olivia Harper didn't flinch. Her hands gripped the podium tightly, her knuckles white, but her voice was steady. "Yes, Your Honor, I'm here because this case is about more than one person's rights. It's about justice for countless others." The judge raised an eyebrow, the corners of his mouth twitching as if suppressing a smirk. "Countless others, you say? Interesting. And you think you're qualified to teach me the law, Miss Harper?" Olivia stood taller. "Not teach you, Your Honor, but I believe I can make my case." The courtroom's murmurs grew louder, disbelief and curiosity mingling in equal measure. Judge Bennett's faint smirk faltered as something flickered in his eyes. Was it doubt, intrigue, or perhaps unease? Whatever it was, it vanished as quickly as it came. "All right," he said, his tone more serious now. "Impress me." The air in the courtroom grew electric. Olivia took a deep breath, her heart pounding. This was her moment. She opened her folder and began. 6 months earlier, Olivia Harper's world had been much simpler. She was just an ordinary teenager in Brookside, a quiet California town. Her days revolved around school, basketball practice, and long nights of studying in her cluttered room. Olivia was smart, consistently at the top of her class, but she was also shy, often feeling like an outsider in the swirl of high school cliques. Her father, Jonathan Harper, was a civil rights attorney and her personal hero. Evenings at their dinner table were filled with stories of the cases he worked on, stories of people fighting against injustice and winning. Olivia soaked up every word, but she never imagined she'd step into his world so soon. One night, her dad came home looking defeated. He set his briefcase down heavily and slumped into a chair. Olivia placed a plate of lasagna in front of him. "Rough day?" she asked. He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "You could say that. I'm working on a case that could set an important precedent, but it's being buried before it even gets a chance." "What's the case about?" Olivia asked, curious. "Equal access to education," he replied. A young girl in Oakwood was denied enrollment at her local school because her parents couldn't provide a specific document. They can't afford legal help. So I took the case pro bono. But the school district's lawyers are pulling every trick to get it dismissed. Olivia's stomach tightened. "That's awful. Isn't there something you can do?" "I'm trying," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "But these things take time and resources. Honestly, I'm not sure we have either." The conversation stuck with Olivia. She couldn't imagine being denied an education because of bureaucratic barriers. As she sat in her father's home office the next day, flipping through his dusty law books, she stumbled across a Supreme Court case that had reshaped educational rights decades ago. An idea began to take root, bold and outrageous. That evening, she approached her dad. "What if I argued the case?" she blurted out before she could lose her nerve. Jonathan froze mid-step, his tie halfway undone. "What? You always say the law belongs to everyone," Olivia pressed. "That it's about standing up for what's right, no matter who you are. So why can't I?" He stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he shook his head. "Courtrooms aren't like school debates, Olivia. They'll tear you apart." "What if I'm prepared?" she countered. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious," she said, her eyes unwavering. Over the next few months, Olivia immersed herself in the case. She read every law book she could find, debated her dad at dinner, and practiced her arguments in front of her bedroom mirror. Her friends thought she was crazy, but Olivia didn't care. She was determined to make a difference. Back in the courtroom, Olivia felt the weight of the audience's stares as she began. "This case isn't just about one student being denied access to education," she said. her voice steady. It's about systemic barriers that have been ignored for far too long. If we allow this injustice to stand, what message are we sending to the next generation? Judge Bennett leaned forward, his amusement fading into curiosity. The room was silent now, every word hanging in the air like a fragile thread. And then, the doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. A man in a dark suit strode in, his face pale. He whispered something to the clerk, who nodded gravely and approached the judge. "Your Honor," the clerk said, her voice trembling. "There's been a development." The judge's expression darkened as he glanced at Olivia, then back at the clerk. "What kind of development?" "It's about this case," the clerk said. "It might be bigger than we thought." The room erupted into chaos. Olivia's heart raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. What could be so important that it disrupted her moment in court? 2 days earlier, Olivia had been fine-tuning her arguments late into the night, surrounded by notes and highlighters. She worried about whether anyone would take her seriously. She had no law degree, no courtroom experience. All she had was passion and a sense of justice. Was that enough? Her dad walked in, carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Burning the midnight oil again?" he asked, setting a mug beside her. "I have to," Olivia replied, blowing on the steaming liquid. "If I don't know every angle of this case, the judge will chew me up and spit me out." Jonathan chuckled. "You're tougher than you think. You remind me of your mom." Olivia's heart ached at the mention of her mother, who had passed away 3 years ago, a fierce advocate for equality. Her mom had been a guiding light in Olivia's life. "Thanks, Dad," she said softly. "I just want to make her proud." "She already is," he said. "And so am I." In the courtroom, Judge Bennett struggled to maintain order as whispers filled the room. "Silence," he barked, slamming his gavel. The murmurs subsided. He turned back to the clerk. "What is this development?" The clerk hesitated. "Your Honor, the Department of Justice is reviewing allegations of widespread misconduct in public school admissions across the state. This case appears to be pivotal to their investigation." The audience gasped. Olivia's breath caught. How could her case be tied to something so massive? Judge Bennett rubbed his temples. "Miss Harper, did you know about this?" "No, Your Honor," she said, her voice barely audible. The judge sighed. "This court will adjourn temporarily while I review the implications of this development." He slammed his gavel, and the courtroom erupted into chaos again. Olivia sat outside the courtroom with her dad, her mind reeling. "Dad, what does this mean?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever it is, you've stepped into something much bigger than we realized." Stephanie Grant, the lead DOJ counsel, approached them. "Miss Harper, I need to speak with you," she said. Olivia exchanged a glance with her dad, who nodded. In a quiet corner, Stephanie said, "The stakes for your case just skyrocketed. Our investigation has uncovered discriminatory practices in public schools across the state. Your case could blow it wide open." Olivia's heart raced. "What do I do?" Stephanie placed a hand on her shoulder. "You fight. Don't let them intimidate you. This is your moment." As Olivia returned to the courtroom days later, her confidence wavered but did not break. She was fighting not just for one girl but for systemic change. The battle ahead would be grueling, but she refused to back down. And so began a fight that would reshape her community, and perhaps the entire system. Through every twist, every challenge, Olivia's resolve grew stronger. She knew one thing for certain: justice was worth every struggle.